Looking for a fun and informative podcast all about training working dogs? Look no further than the LWDG Pod Dog. This weekly show is hosted by me, Joanne Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group, and I chat to experienced trainers and experts in the field who will give you helpful tips and advice. Whether you're just getting started or you've been working dogs for years, this podcast will have something for you. So pull up a chair, pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to LWDG Pod Dog, and let us help you build a better bond with your best friend. Hello and welcome to another episode of LWDG Pod Dog. This week we're going to be talking about, is your Gundog ready for the shooting season? Joining me for this amazing topic is LWDG Group expert Emma Stevens. How are you, Emma?
I'm good, thank you, Jo.
Before we get started, Emma, would you like to give the listeners a little bit of a background?
So my name is Emma Stevens. I run Cunning Shot Dog Training, which is we've got two branches, one in the East Midlands and one in Cumbria. We do pet gun dog and working gun dog training for puppies all the way up to competition level.
Fantastic. And you are living, working, breathing on a shooting estate, is that correct?
Yes, so I'm a wife of a gamekeeper. Between the two of us, we have just shy of about 20 dogs. So they are kennelled and live in the house as well. So we've got a big mix of kind of job roles, lifestyles for all of them as well. So I just thought I'd come on and hopefully give some insight into when your dog's ready, because I remember what that was like. And even now the pups coming through, it's like, oh, are they ready? Are they not ready? And kind of what to look for.
Well, the shooting season is in full swing, and if you're a gun dog owner, like you said, we want to make sure our dogs are ready for it, because it's a big jump from the training field to the absolute, like, being out there in the shooting field, everything going on. Let's start with, what do we look for generally in a well-trained gun dog?
So for me, I would say it also depends on kind of the job roles. They do kind of mix into each other. But for a beating dog, so that's the dog that's kind of in the beating line, flushing pheasants towards the guns, in your normal standard driven shoots, which I'll explain a little bit more about as well. You're looking for steadiness, really good level of obedience. So for me, that would be heel work, good sits and waits for long durations. You may be required to hold lines for a long time while guns get ready. The keeper might be being told to do different things. So you need to be able to multitask and rely on your dog that they're under control and staying under control. Hunt pattern depends on the ground terrain that you're on. So again, that's going to be a little bit of education for you as an owner as to what a pattern should look like based on different ground terrain as well, and what would be required of them in that. So a hunt pattern into heel work and then back into hunt patterns and things like that would be essential for me. And then obviously that stop to movement, stop to flush, because we don't want any dogs chasing anything.
Now, for a lot of people listening to you, they're already probably thinking, oh my God, how do we even train these things? A lot of these things, you are one of the experts involved in the Hot Mess Handler. We cover these sort of topics in depth in there, don't we? So we don't have time in a podcast to go through all those things you mentioned, but anybody listening can go watch that and know exactly what you mean by what you just said.
Yeah, definitely. So the terminology bits are kind of, they're all explained in things, and steadiness and exercises and stuff like that you can be building to get your dog up to that level. I think the biggest, obviously, the terminology bits that I explained was obviously the beating line as such and a driven shoot day. So beaters are the people that push birds towards guns. Driven is just the style of shooting where you're literally driving birds towards guns and over the top of them, as opposed to walked up where you're walking with the birds being flushed and you're shooting away from you rather than birds flying at you. So they're just the main differences in that. But the hunting side of it from a beating dog is very, very similar. Steadiness, control, heel work, stop whistle. They're your biggest tips for me.
Why is steadiness so important?
I think partly because it's overlooked. I don't think it's done enough. I think people go, right, my dog can sit, that's it, let's move on to something fancy. And it is so needed on a shoot day for so many different reasons. You've got to navigate fences, you've got to get them on and off beaters buses, you've got long periods of waiting around, whether that's being social or whether that's waiting for guns to get ready or pick us up to finish after drives. You've got areas where you need to be sitting and waiting throughout the drive because maybe there's been a big flush and you need to get your dog back and sitting next to you and things. And then, like I said, when ground terrain changes as well, that might depend on how you're actually then working your dog. So that steadiness almost needs to be automatic by the time you get to a shoot day, so that you can concentrate on where you're walking, where you're climbing, listening to the keeper telling you what to do, walking in the line, making sure that people either side of you are walking straight where you're meant to be and things like that as well. So at that point, you need to be able to, for short periods of time, switch off your dog and trust them that they're going to do their bit. And that comes from that ultimate steadiness and self-control from puppy.
On a shoot day, there is, how can I say it? There is almost a feeling of controlled chaos, isn't it? So you're trying to keep up with the day in your own right, without having to check every 30 seconds, where is my dog?
Yeah, and equally, the worst thing can be you on a shoot day being the one that's nagging at your dog. Sit, stay, get here, what's this? And whistles and stop whistles and heel and repeating commands, because you're going to annoy yourself and you're going to nag your dog in already a heightened environment where they're already conflicted about listening to you versus what's going on in the environment as well. And also you're going to be nervous as well, especially if it's your first day out as well. You're going to be so nervous about your dog being under control in that point. That's going to feed down to them as well. So you need to be able to kind of like be that lovely graceful swan on the surface and paddling like hell, where actually nobody knows what's going on in your head as well. And even your dog needs to not know that bit of what's going on either. They need to think that you're calm, collected and in control.
And when we're on an estate, it's great for a dog to have been steady at home in your local park while you threw around dummies. And then when you go on an estate, it's a big jump for a dog to suddenly have all the sights, all the smells, all the noise, all that stuff going on. It's a huge attack on the senses, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's ways that you can kind of prepare your dogs for that as well and prep them for it. So for me, beating or picking up, my massive requirements are that they have heard shot. They have seen things move either along the floor or in the air and are steady to that. So they are able to sit and watch it happen and not need to chase it. They need to have seen a beater's flag as well and had that nice and up close, because you may be given one on a day, and if your dog's never seen it before, it's another new thing for them. So we're just trying to prevent and limit the exposure to new things on that day, because the day in itself is going to be new. So anything that we can do to make that dog be like, oh, okay, yeah, I've seen that before, I've got that doesn't need to freak me out or scare me or overexcite me. I've seen that's copable, and I can manage my behavior based on having seen that before. Cold game is another one. Beaters, for beating dogs and for picking up dogs, they need to have seen cold game lying on the floor. If you don't ever want them to pick it up, they need to have been able to just sort of like hunt over it. And if you do want them to pick it up, they need to obviously be able to retrieve it and bring it back to you nicely. And obviously we can only do that with cold game. We can't do that with live game until the day. Ground scent of cold game as well can kind of start to mimic what your dog would look like on that live scent as well, can be really helpful. Exposure to large vehicles. So if you do live in kind of a suburban area and you don't really see tractors and things like that, try and get them out to more rural areas where they can be up close to tractors, because they're going to be more likely to be, tractors and quad bikes are going to be kind of your bread and butter of shoot day transport. And if a dog's never been, they don't necessarily need to have been on a trailer, but at least if they've heard tractors and been up close, that can really help as well. And then piles of birds and birds in people's hands. That's another big thing that I see dogs completely lose their head over, is that when people are exchanging and passing birds between each other and stuff, the dogs cannot cope with the live birds or the dead birds at that point, but warm game being passed between people and tied up and braced up and things like that as well. So that's another thing, and piles on the floor of birds, because they'll be kind of lined out and braced and then put onto game carts. So those kind of things can help a dog really just calm down if they've been exposed to that before. And then the last is the social aspect of it. We know that people like to socialize on shoots. That's the whole point of them. So things where there's like loads of food. So I take mine to pubs for that, because they need to learn that food being handled and passed around and stuff, they don't need to jump at it. Same with drinks being passed around and things like that as well. So they're kind of the biggest kind of top tips as such.
I can remember when my dog saw a beater's flag for the first time, and you don't think about it until the season starts. But they're really noisy, aren't they? So for anybody who is listening who hasn't seen a beater's flag, you can get really professional ones, or you can have one most people have, which I think is like either a stick or a piece of alkathene pipe with a feed bag tied to it with a bit of bail cord. You can quite easily make ones yourselves. But the noise of definitely of a feed bag is like, it's like a banging whistly type of noise, isn't it? And it's like a really loud flappy noise. If you've got wind, it could be something that if a dog's not seen or heard, it's going to be a bit of a shock to their system.
Yeah, definitely. And things like when I've got dogs coming through, clients' dogs as well, coming through and starting to get ready for those sorts of days, we'll do heel work with them cracking a flag, because that might be required. It might be that your birds are really jumpy on a shoot day and the keeper's gone, right, everybody get your dogs back and we're just going to walk them instead of using the dogs to push them. And at that point, your dog's going to have to be quite close to you with you cracking this flag next to them. And like you say, the feed bags or the kind of more professionally made ones, they can give quite a crack out. And obviously then they rustle as well. And if you use them to pick your way through paths and stuff like that as well, you're using that flag against other objects and things. Tapping is another thing. So if you're ever put on what's called a stop, where you're put in an area that's quite close to a flush point and you're there to just stop the birds pushing into an area maybe that the keeper doesn't want them in, that again is where your steadiness comes in, that your dog will have to sit with you pretty much for the whole drive at your side with you banging and flagging and doing everything to push the birds the right way. And they're not even required to do anything at that point. There's no hunting involved, there's no heel work, you're literally stationary. And again, those sorts of things can really throw dogs. And that's why the steadiness and the exposure to shoot day equipment is really important to me, that I kind of try and pass on to everybody.
You've mentioned some things there. Like you said, you can definitely get them really, really ready for them if you're innovative in your approach in the run up to shooting season. Things like getting in and out of a trailer, getting in and out of a mule, hearing a quad bike. You know, there are ways you can find people who've got these things at their access, and maybe you could just like go sit and listen to quad bikes or something, where the dog isn't suddenly got a day where it gets out of your car and then it's got quad bikes coming past it, mules coming past it, trailers, tractors, all these sights, all these smells, all these different people, all these noises. Because it's that point where when you've blown their mind, all your training, all your work, everything is lost at that, isn't it?
Yeah, so you'll almost setting yourself up to fail from the minute you get your dog out of the dog box, because we know that everything new that you throw at them obviously just depreciates their level of concentration and control. So you could have the best dog in the world in a training field that is ready temperament wise and training wise for a shoot day, yet they haven't experienced all of that stuff that you're then going to get them out of the car and expose them to. So it wouldn't matter then based on their training. It's kind of their socialization skills and desensitization at that point, which is more behavior stuff really than training to get them ready for that shoot day.
And where we're talking here about like preparing your dog for the shooting season, I'm sure people would have thought we're going to talk, like you said, about sit or steady, and here we are talking about lots of other stuff that is just as important as the sit and stay and all those types of things. Once we've got used to the idea that we've got to get ready for these things beforehand, we can then go along. Like, for example, if there's somebody who knows got quad bikes, who can ride quad bikes in one field while you do the steadiness and the dummy work in another field, that's how you start bringing those things together.
Yeah, so you would start with kind of distance exposure with all of the stuff, and then getting closer and closer and closer until you could literally send your dog for a retrieve and have a quad bike run alongside it if it needed to. So that sort of thing is where you would go with that. Is you would start with distance exposure, make sure they're really, really, I mean, we've done podcasts and training based on like introduction to shot and all of that kind of stuff, and that would be, it's almost exactly the same as any noise or physical thing that your dog would need to be exposed to is just a socialization plan of big distances and moving it closer and closer.
And you touched on a little bit earlier, getting used to things running past, the control of the prey drive. We could have done loads of work again, like I said, on like dummies and throwing a dummy low, or having access to flying rabbits, not real rabbits of course, but all those types of things. But then out on a shooting estate, obviously you're going to see moving birds, but there are other animals in the environment that maybe your dog has never ever seen.
Yeah, so for that, again, it's as much as possible desensitization. So if your dog is already chasing a running dog and can't cope with that element, it's unlikely to be able to then sit still while you've got a deer going past, or a fox that goes through the drive, or duck that get up because they make a hell of a lot of noise and things like that. So you've got, for me, there's a couple of elements to it. There's, can they see things move and be steady? And can they be controllable on ground scent? So you've got sight and nose that you need to be able to be kind of confident that your dog can cope with, because they're both almost two different things. And eventually they merge together, that the dog links, this scent means something moves. And until you've got that kind of link, you've kind of got semi-control of it, if that makes sense. So you can almost teach them separately and then pull them together. So things like, if you live in a rural area and your gun dog trainer maybe doesn't have the facilities to be able to give you this sort of stuff, is wildlife parks, and just go and sit on a bench, let them watch everything. The quieter you are, the more likely normal wildlife will resume once you've sat down and chilled out for a little bit. Deer parks, you can go and walk around deer parks with your dogs on lead, and they're like right up against a fence. So there's a huge fences that your dog couldn't ever get anywhere near if they did get overexcited. Some wildlife parks will let you walk dogs around the perimeters and things like that as well. Ponds are brilliant. So where you can go and like feed ducks, and kids go and feed ducks and things like that, go and take your dogs to them and just sit at distance and move closer and closer. And then you've got ground scent to deal with. So as long as that, as well as that sight, you've also got the ground scent, and that would be cold game. You can put cold game out, and that will create scent, and you can see if you can control your dog on that. You can buy different scent off different like Gundog equipment suppliers and things like that, and you can put scent on the ground and just try and get them to quarter on it and things like that. Bolting rabbits are brilliant, and then depending on obviously the facilities that you've got access to, steady pens and then rabbit pens as well would be where I go to kind of progressing forward. But dogs are smart as well. So they do know, and they start to pick up on when they're in an enclosed pen and can be corrected versus big open space and there's no way you're catching me and things like that. So just be aware that steady in a pen doesn't necessarily mean, right, that's it, my dog's 100% steady in every situation. So it's about teaching you in those situations to read your dog's behavior as to when they're getting slightly towards the tipping point and being able to control that before they tip over the edge.
And there are probably people listening to this now go, oh my God, my dog is never, ever going to get to the point of getting on a shoot. There is no rush to get them out before they are 1 year old, is there?
No, definitely not. I mean, there's a bitch, actually, she's one of my house bitches. She is 3 and she'll be going out for her first time this year because she took so long to mature. She just was not ready, and it would have just been a horrible experience for both me and her had I taken her out any earlier for picking up. She just wouldn't have coped. So she's done a little bit of dogging in, she's done a little bit of cold game, and now hopefully she'll be ready maybe for the middle to end of this season, because again, too much ground scent and live birds around. And that's another thing probably to touch on as well, with just if you're going for the first time and you've never been, go on your own first. Don't be pressured to take your dog. Go on your own, experience it. watch other people work their dogs, pick what you do like and don't like about how they're handling their dogs as well, and learn the etiquette of what it looks like to work their dogs and what gets somebody told off and what gets somebody praised and all of that kind of stuff. If you can experience some of the job roles, go and do. So if you can get maybe even just a drive watching some pickers up versus some beaters, so that you can kind of start to think about which role your dog's going to be a bit more suited for. And even if you spend one season going on your own and not even taking a dog, so that you're really prepared and know what to work on over that summer period to get your dog out the following season. And then there's different job roles that your dogs can do as well. So dogging in, which is what I touched on a minute ago, which is what I was doing with one of my dogs. That's basically where you walk the birds in from the boundaries with a keeper and push them back into the estate so that we don't lose them because they're wild birds. And that job role can be really, really brilliant for your dog, depending on how you approach it. It can be completely detrimental to their career as a beating dog or a picking up dog if it's done wrong. So just be cautious about if you got offered or asked to go and dog in, that it's not free running chasing birds, which is what it can often be. Some of our dogging in team, that is what's expected of them, and they won't ever go near beating lines or shoot days. It's a completely different job role that we've got a set of kennels for that job role in particular, versus if you were using it to get exposure, you would treat it like you were beating on your own, and you would keep your dog nice and close. They wouldn't be required to chase or push on. So it's just having that conversation with the keeper if you do get asked to be able to go and do that.
Yeah, because also there's obviously your dog needs to be fit, but you need to be fit. And I know from my first season going out, it's a level of fitness that you might think you have, but you actually don't, do you? Because you literally go from spending a lot of time standing around, maybe feeling cold, maybe feeling, everything's one way, and then you go out, you walk up a big hill through a load of bushes, climb over a few trees, you're boiling hot, your heart is beating, you're sliding in mud, whatever. They're very contrasting situations, environments, and you go from one to the other, and then when you get to the top of that hill, maybe you might be standing around again. So it's getting used to that type of fitness where it's almost high intensity interval training where you're nothing go.
Yeah, I explain it. If anybody's asked me what beating's like in particular, picking up's a little bit easier. But beating, I say, is almost like an army obstacle course. If you think about a movie of they're crawling through the mud and things like that, that's literally sometimes what beating can be like. And there is pressure. It's so enjoyable though. The team of beaters in general is just an amazing experience to be in, and you're all in it together. But you can go from being, it's a nice gentle walk through a cover crop, to go because something's gone wrong and the birds have gone in a different way and you need to get around them to get them back in the right place. So it's like herding very flighty sheep through an army obstacle course with someone shouting at you with your dog under control at all times.
You're really selling it there now. I've got to be honest, I love beating, and I don't think I've never tried picking up, so maybe I would like it, but I enjoy beating so much I don't think I'd want to do anything else. But you are quite right, it is that sort of, that feeling of, it is controlled chaos in some respects, and sometimes not even that controlled a chaos. So your dog needs to be used to you suddenly being out of breath, moving quickly, thinking quickly, lots of noise, because all those things again, I don't know how you would reenact them in training days, but it is that your dogs get used to seeing you like that, isn't it?
Yeah, so the only thing I can think of being able to do that is just, you could try running with them to start building their fitness and your fitness a little bit, because even on flat ground, even if you're just running street running, you're going to teach your dog what that kind of looks like when you move quick. They don't need to get overexcited. If you do need to run to get to a place quickly because the keeper's told you to, they'll at least understand that means, oh, okay, I've got to stay with you. So running with them's really good. I do actually start doing that with some of mine. For my dog's fitness, swimming and running is one of the biggest things for them. We do it a bit easier though. I do it alongside a quad bike instead of me running. But I have been running with them this summer because I had a baby last year. So my fitness is not as where it should be, even for picking up. So yeah, those sorts of things is the things that you can start doing with yours, or continue doing with them as we're into the shoot season already.
And as the season goes on, not that it gets easier for a young dog, but there's less birds on the ground, so there's less movement. There's still quite a lot of movement, but there's less movement. It might be easier for a young dog as season goes on. It can be harder for the team because you're working harder to find the birds.
Yeah, and that's the difference in how the season progresses may mean it's more appropriate or less appropriate for your different dogs' personalities. So I don't normally take young dogs right at the start of the season. We have a large volume of birds on our estate, which means obviously only a small percentage initially get shot. So that being said, then my beating dogs have got a huge volume of birds in front of them, and my picking up dogs have got a huge volume of live birds when they're hunting for dead or wounded birds. So for a young dog, that's very confusing and very conflicting for them, and you're putting them in situations where you're going, make the right decision even though we're loading the choice that's actually like almost borderline seesaw going the other way for you. We're making it very difficult for you to work in the environment and stay under control and keep your head in the game. Whereas towards the end of the season, there will be, the birds are smarter for a start. So they kind of know the crack a little bit, which can go one of two ways. They can either move a lot easier and your young dog doesn't almost even get that contact flush where they get that they've physically seen a bird and pushed them themselves. But equally, birds can also get smart and they sit tight, hoping dogs are going to go over them because they have done in the past, because the ground scent's been so crazy. So you can then almost get very young dogs getting very close to birds and almost trapping them and doing things that we call pegging them, which is actually just catching a live, very healthy, not shot bird and thinking it's brilliant, which is obviously not what you want them to be doing either. From a picking up point of view, you've got young dogs that could be failing to actually find birds because there's not a lot getting shot, or there's not a lot falling in areas and the ground scent isn't as strong and things like that, so they can really struggle to find birds. And vice versa on your beating team as well, your young dogs could be being pushed by just the terrain and the natural environment and the keeper as well, saying, right, push them really far left away from you, and you're actually ruining the nice tight pattern that you had right at the start of the season to try and find these birds and push them in the right direction. So there's pros and cons to both beginning and end of season. I sometimes hover halfway point. My young dogs kind of start going out on maybe one or two drives in sort of the middle of the season where we're at that kind of halfway point. And I try and go on places, which is why I say go without a dog to start with, so that you start to learn the drives and you learn where is appropriate to start putting your young dogs out and in, and can we get to the beaters bus, or do we end up back at my car where I can put them away between drives and stuff like that to give them downtime. I'm aware of all of that. So it's something else that I don't have to stress about. I can go, right, I know after this drive, it's going to be a busy drive for this dog, but we end up then going back for 11s and I can pop them back in the car and they can chill for 2 drives. So there's things like that can kind of help you manage your day and manage your dog as well when you start bringing them out for that first day.
And a keeper would always prefer that you put the dog back on the lead than the dog ruin the drive, yes?
100%, yes, which is why heel work is a huge thing on and off lead, because if you think your dog is starting to tire, that listening is getting less and less and less each time, you're maybe having to ask for things twice or maybe 3 times before they do it, you can't really use a shoot day as a correction place. It's not a training environment. So if they mess up and they don't stop on a whistle, you can't come out of that beating line to go and put them back and then walk back to where you were and blow your stop whistle again and then go to them and reward them and hunt them again. There's no time for that kind of stuff. So at that point, it's management rather than corrections. So your corrections are for training, management is for your shoot day stuff. So at that point, if I know my dog's starting to tire and things like that, what I would probably start doing is you hunt for 5 steps, you're back at heel for 3 steps, you hunt for 5 steps. So I'm really like staggering it to kind of go, here, have a bit of freedom. Now come back and calm down and cool your head down. Have a little bit, calm down. I'd start again thinking about the terrain. So I'd start, maybe they can hunt right at the start of the drive where they're nowhere near the guns and we're really far back. But then as we start to get to flush points and things like that, they go back on lead 4 so that they don't get those huge flushes happening right in front of them, where they've got to, again, make that choice of, do I chase these hundreds of birds flying, or do I sit steady next to mum and be a good girl or boy? So those sorts of things as well can kind of help. But yeah, a keeper would much prefer, if you don't know what to do, to put your dog back on a lead, because the choice at that point is, if your dog's at heel, it can still flush birds because you're still moving and you're still walking. If your dog is off lead and decides to flush birds that maybe shouldn't have been flushed yet, that's a big problem.
Yes, unless you've got a black Labrador and can get away with it, pretty much every other dog, or black cocker, every other dog is quite identifiable. So top tips, if you're buying your next dog, buy black, because nobody knows who it belongs to. Thank you very much for that. It was a fantastic podcast. If you haven't been out shooting before and you intend to go, please listen to this podcast twice, listen to it 3 times, because the information given to us today by Emma is literally nuggets of gold. Super helpful. Loads and loads of training of Emma's within the LWDG, within our courses, and of course Emma is an LWDG group expert, and she's there to answer all your questions within our community. So thank you very much for that, Em. How can people get hold of you? How do they find you other than within the LWDG?
So Instagram at Cunning Shot Dog Training, my website cunningshotdogtraining.co.uk, or email me or Facebook me. So just Emma Louise Stevens on Facebook, or Cunning Shot Dog Training on Facebook. So any of those platforms you can get hold of me.
Fantastic. We hope you all enjoyed listening, and we hope to see you all next week. Thank you for listening to LWDG Pod Dog with me, Jo Perrott. Now, we all know training a dog takes time, energy and patience, but our lives can be really busy. Don't worry, the LWDG has got you covered. Join us for our free planning workshop, where we'll show you how to use short 10-minute training sessions each day to fast forward your dog's education. Our experts have years of experience in training dogs and will help you get started on the right foot. Register now and start making progress with your furry friend today. Go to our Facebook page, the Ladies Working Dog Group, and click on the pinned post, or visit www.thelwdg.com.